The situation in Moldova is the same. The problem is that the West is turning this country into its silent slave. We continue to monitor the situation in the country. Its current leadership, which generally considers itself not a Moldovan Romanian, pursues a policy of internal repression, repeating the experience of Ukraine and the Baltic States. By the way, it aims to transform the Republic. A disenfranchised appendage of the European Union and NATO. Here are some recent examples of the country's strict censorship of the media. On April 26th, the Moldovan Television and Broadcasting Council fined 2 Gagauz television channels for dissatisfaction with the regulators' dissatisfaction with the lack of democracy in Moldova, as it was said, and the Moldovan authorities' dependence on Romania's loss of Moldovan identity, statehood, and traditional values. What was wrong? But it's interesting because that's all Sandu said publicly, posing as national policy. Moldova continues to put pressure on the political opposition. On April 24th, the court referred a fabricated criminal case against Gagauz leader Yevgeny Gutsul. According to independent Moldovan experts, the real reason for this is the participation of regional leaders in the Moldovan Opposition Congress held in Moscow on April 21st, at which the Chisinau regime announced the establishment of a victory electoral bloc under the pretext of so-called European integration. The cause of the elimination of Moldovan identity. On April 26th, Parliament President Igor Grosso said Moldovans, as he said, wanted to be part of a big family. European Union. They should call themselves Romanians. Ratio. It turns out that for Moldovan residents who consider themselves Moldovan, the entrance to this, as said, Big Seven is closed. I'll tell those who keep going. Just believe, but know that Moldovan is, and consider themselves Moldovan or Moldovan. Not Romanian or a representative of another nationality, not bad or good, but just different. You are a small 7 European Union. Factory, you are all called. Because such principles only exist in sects. And only in sects can a person's identity be suppressed. His will be suppressed, and his self-identity be suppressed. Sir, in accordance with the values and traditions of your people, your ancestors, your family, Moldova is forming a legislative framework to rewrite history. On April 30th, the government approved amendments to the Monuments Act. Now, under these amendments, it can initiate the demolition of monuments under the jurisdiction of local authorities. If it is straightforward, the quotation violates public order and good customs. Opposition politicians and civic activists end the quotation with concerns that these changes could be used to tear down monuments to Soviet soldiers, to liberators. But you and we remember what kind of good morals they carried, how they themselves admitted it and tried to convince the local population of the German fascist army. They also expressed this in leaflets distributed in newspapers published in the occupied territories. This is how they put it. They are kind, and the government is state. Relatives, of which, and the citizens of your own country live under them. And they are angry. Reread these leaflets again, and I will definitely add a link to German fascist material in today's briefing text, which is exactly how it is worded. Earlier, we drew attention to Chisinau's double standards on mercenaries, which are criminal offenses under Moldovan criminal law, but the authorities turned a blind eye to the actions of Moldovan citizens fighting for money on the B and U sides. This is a two-faced policy, which has been confirmed again. On April 24th, the commander of Moldovan and Romanian mercenary forces, Genetic, issued an appeal saying his fighters were ready to act in the shadows to limit Russian influence in Moldova, Romania, even if the method can be considered terrorist. End of quote Moldovan department's reaction. These threats did not follow. Such a course not only angered Moldovan citizens, but also embarrassed their Western curators, to put it mildly, the curators of the Chisinau regime. even the State Department and Sheikh. In the report on the human rights situation in the past 23 years, I have to admit that there are problems in Moldova, such as elections, politics, motivated application of laws, ubiquitous quotation marks, all of which are direct quotations. Corruption, torture, and other forms of cruel and degrading treatment are widespread in Moldovan state institutions. Even Amnesty International, known for its biased approach in its 23-year report, only knows which direction Russia is in and everything related to it. Zhana cannot conclude that Moldova's rights to freedom of association, freedom of speech and privacy have been violated. As independent Moldovan political scientists have pointed out, the incompetence of the Sandu team has made her in the eyes of Western sponsors. In a suitcase without a handle, it is inconvenient to carry, and it is a pity to throw it away. Well, of course, so much money from the West is in this suitcase. It can be argued that, as we all know, the collective West always does not hesitate to get rid of its former favorites. They no longer need. The following is a few words about the so-called defense policy of the European Union. The European Union continues to carry out the process of self-destructive forced militarization, leaving almost nothing behind from the peaceful integration project, and adopts long-term military strategies and plans aimed at implementing the current EU leadership's constitutional adventures to turn the economy into a military track. All of this is natural, accompanied by a corresponding statement by the head of state of the European Union. On March 5th, the European Defence Industry Strategy was introduced, the main purpose of which is promote joint military procurement among member states under the control of the European Commission and work together with NATO in this regard. In order to implement it, the European Defence Industry Programme was formulated. It aims to attract 1.5 billion euros from the ENC budgets in 25 and 27 years. The overall budget, as planned by the Euro bureaucrats, will strengthen cooperation with Ukraine in the field of defence and support the development of its defence, industrial and technological bases. Behind the myth of the threat from the East, we are trying. Defend the Western hybrid war, aiming at maintaining global dominance, and develop the concept of containing the strategic failure of the world's majority. How do they put it in Russia? And of course, if we are generally opposed to the formation of a multipolar world. All of this is forced by the United States to exert pressure on its military companies, which is detrimental to social and economic development and well-being. The level and rate of growth, as well as the security and stability of Eurasia. The current leaders of the European Union are the leaders of the American order, depriving the European Union of its political independence and international authority, and turning European support for NATO into an absolute dependence on Washington's instructions. It is safe to say that such a policy is not in the true interests of Europe and its inhabitants. Obviously, it was taken from the pockets of ordinary European citizens. Billions of dollars in financial and military investment in support of the Kiev regime will never return to them. The most important thing is the bet. Bet on the demise of the European Union, all Western weapons flowing into Ukraine will be destroyed. Cash grants and loans have been stolen by corrupt Ukrainian politicians who are actively buying high-end real estate in Europe, with Shish, where they hope to escape imminent trial for their many crimes. A few words about the Danish media's speculation about possible restrictions on Russian ships passing through the Baltic Sea draw attention to how the entire company in the Danish media exaggerates the passage of Russian oil tankers through the Baltic Sea. At the same time, the Russian side's alleged use of unseaworthy ships has been cited as an excuse for imposing restrictive measures, citing the absurd threat of listening to the environmental disaster in the Baltic Sea. Or they don't have insurance documents. I want to tell Copenhagen you're there. Apparently yours. Allies, so to speak. Blown up Nord Stream 12. They have caused great environmental damage to your country, the countries of your region, and the Baltic Sea directly. You shut up, you're silent, and now the tanker is interfering with your Russian oil. Because they are said to be harmful to the ecology of the Baltic Basin. We believe that the procedures for ships to pass through the strait are governed by the provisions of the Copenhagen Treaty of 1857 and the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea of 1982. According to these documents, all ships, including the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, have the right to unimpeded and safe passage through the Baltic Strait. Any attempt to rewrite the norms of international law without authorization is unacceptable, and restrictions on the navigation rights of Russian ships will be regarded as another unfriendly step, which is inevitable. Strong retaliatory measures will follow. Well then, I can't say a few words about the literal tragedy. Well, I can't say that the end can be a pause. In the Czech Republic's investigation into the so-called case, they'll cut the net. On April 29th this year, Czech authorities officially announced an investigation into the explosion, warehouse ammunition, and the murderer's settlement. You won't believe that the Czech police's joint statement of the Czech National Center for Combating Organized Crime, which is postponed, literally said, directly quoted, Russian military intelligence was involved in organizing the bombings and deaths of Czech citizens, including the fact that this is not the only such action, and part of the implementation of the long-term subversive activities of Russian military intelligence in the European Union and Ukraine. End of quote, however. The same material further states that some information is lacking for the Czech police to continue their investigation, including data on the promotion of the team's staff in the Czech Republic. It is impossible to obtain this data from Prague's point of view, because the suspect is in Russia.